If you didn't already know this, I'm a big nerd about net neutrality. No, don't leave. I know net neutrality is like that weird nerdy thing no one wants to talk about anymore, but I promise, at the very least, this time it's important. It was the last ones too, but we all got burnt out over the topic. I get it. But a neutral internet is necessary for basically everyone to have a functional, quality experience online. The fact that it's even up for debate terrifies me. If I'm a user of a service like, I don't know, Netflix or YouTube, and I'm already paying my internet provider like Comcast, as well as paying YouTube and Netflix, why should the internet provider also charge Google and Microsoft or these other companies arbitrary amounts of money because they feel like it? And why should they be able to, as the ISP in the middle, arbitrarily choose which things they do and don't charge more for? We already hate ISPs, as we should. They're corrupt, evil, terrible corporations that just want to screw us over the vast majority of the time. Comcast won the worst company of the year in the US like 7 years straight. They got so much hate that they rebranded to Xfinity, hoping nobody would notice. These companies are evil in like the most straight up sense. And I'm the guy who's known for defending companies a lot, but ISPs are just straight fucking garbage. So yeah, giving them more power is always scary, especially when we're giving them power as they compete with other things. Imagine a world where Comcast could force us to use Peacock by making Netflix insanely expensive. What if using Peacock was free, even though it's a terrible service, but Netflix costs you another $20 a month, and they charge Netflix more money on the other side as well? That should be illegal. Thankfully, it is. Well, it was until net neutrality was revoked during the Trump administration, and now it might get worse again because there is a new proposal, and this time is not focused on broadband. It's actually focused on 5G. As soon as I saw this was a thing, I almost had a heart attack because I thought we were over this bullshit. I honestly thought we were done, but here we are. 5G fast lanes might be in our future. What the hell is going on? The FCC is set to vote on April 25th to restore its authority over companies that we pay to get online and reinstate federal net neutrality protections that were jettisoned by the Trump admin in 2017. Net neutrality protections are supposed to ensure that we, not our ISPs that we are paying to get online, decide what we do online. The ISP should not get to pick where we go online. We should. That's totally fair. Your ISP shouldn't get to pick which services you do and don't have access to. I shouldn't have to explain why that doesn't make sense. If you think that it makes sense for your ISP to choose what you can and can't see online, let me know in the comments so I can ban you forever. The FCC released its draft rules early in April, and there's much to celebrate in them. Mobile carriers like T-Mobile, AT&T, and Verizon that have been degrading video quality for mobile users will have to stop. Also an important point. Admittedly, video takes up more bandwidth than things that aren't video. So if you have a handful of people watching a lot of video on your service and then a bunch more who aren't, theoretically, the people watching video are slowing down the service for everybody else. That's a thing for the service to figure out, not for you to figure out when all of a sudden you can't watch video anymore for no reason. Ugh. God. It's also important to call out that the FCC has allowed for state neutrality protections like California to continue operating, which means that most ISPs can't really do much here because even if they support this in other states, not doing it in the California means that some customers aren't affected. It's easier to just not do it to everyone because the level of penny pinching that's happening here is so small that it would cost more to make it state specific than to just not do it, which is what most of these ISPs have been dealing with is because certain states don't allow it, we're just not going to bother yet. But as they get closer to the point where it's financially justifiable, which you'll see how they're doing that later on with some of the crazy stuff they're proposing, this could get real bad real fast. And I really hope the FCC makes the right decision here. The FCC also made it harder for ISPs to evade net neutrality at the point where the data enters their networks. However, there's a huge problem. The proposed rules make it possible for mobile ISPs to start picking applications and putting them in a fast lane, where they'll perform better generally and much better if the network gets congested. And here's where the problem begins. If I'm on Verizon, and Verizon's partnered with some shitty streaming service like Peacock, and Peacock offers them a crazy grant of money to make sure it never slows down, all of a sudden, there's one thing you could use on your phone that's fast when everything else is slow. And once an ISP has the ability to do that, they're going to go to every single company and offer that deal. And every company that says no is now going to be insanely slow on your device. What? Like, it's hard for me to fathom. Imagine you have a Ford car and you go to a gas station and you start filling your car with gas. And instead of taking like 30 seconds, it's going to take an hour. And you're like, okay, can this just not take an hour? And they say, oh yeah, we couldn't afford the fee in order to make this faster. So instead, it's going to be slower for you. I'm sorry. I guess you own a Ford. We can't really do anything about it. If you want to help us pay this massive fee to Ford so that we can fuel your car faster, sure. But we're not able to control how fast the car gets fueled. It just sounds fucking insane because it is. A neutral internet is necessary for fair competition. And I'm already seeing comments in chat that are stupid. And normally I would ignore them, but this is my CTO. Why wouldn't you just change carriers to the one your platform of choice has paid to be fast on? because most people are on contracts with their devices. They have 2+ years before they can switch. So if all of a sudden the video streaming service they want to use is no longer the right speed on their device, they might be stuck for years. And when they signed those contracts, these things weren't known or understood at the time. It's just insane to think that this is a fair market when contracts are being signed. Ugh, this is bad. And it gets worse. So the examples they give here are insane. T-Mobile, AT&T, and Verizon are all testing ways to create these 5G fast lanes for apps such as video conferencing, games, and video, where the ISP chooses and controls who gets boosted. They use a technical feature in 5G called network slicing, where parts of their radio spectrum get used as a special lane for the chosen app or apps, separated from the usual internet traffic. So there will literally be parts of the 5G spectrum that we can only access if we're using the services that have made an agreement with the carrier. They're literally taking part of the service you pay for, like a percentage of the spectrum you have, and locking it off based on whether or not the company on the other side has paid enough money. They found a way to do the thing that net neutrality is supposed to prevent, which is charging both sides. Imagine if when you bought gas, Ford charged you money and the company that is giving you the gas is money. That's insane. If every time you went to an Exxon to fuel your car, Exxon had to pay money to Ford and you had to pay money to Ford, and then you can finally pay Exxon to fuel your car. Holy shit. The FCC's draft order opens the door to these fast lanes, so long as the app provider isn't charged for them. That's how they worked around it. They can still charge you, they just can't charge Exxon. Ugh. And as we all know, these things tend to slip and that can change over time. This means we could soon see fast lanes offered like such. Super Saver, $50 a month. For one phone line with auto pay, yada yada. Super Awesome 5G, $25 a month more. For one phone line with auto pay discount, plus taxes and fees for using eligible payments. But it makes League of Legends, Minecraft, and Fortnite faster. So if you want to actually be able to play League without dropping frames and losing battles because your packets weren't being sent fast enough, hope you're prepared to pay $25 a month more, even if you're not using the service as much. Whew. And then we have the Super Awesome 5G Plus, which also makes YouTube and TikTok not suck. So even if all of these plans offer the same speeds and the same amount of data, which by the way, I hate data caps, so there's a long argument there. But even if these services are the same, if you want the things you use to be fast enough, good luck. You're spending almost twice as much money. And this could absolutely happen. More examples. We could see add-ons like enhanced video conferencing for $10 a month or one-time 24-hour passes to have prioritized online gaming. Believe it or not, these are already things. Like with the amount of data you have to download for a game, and Comcast right now has a 1.2 terabyte a month cap on almost all of the plans through Xfinity, which you can opt out of for $30 a month. Or you can join the Xfi Complete package, which gives you their shit router. It finally gives you access to decent upload speeds, and it kills that cap for $25 a month more instead. So you can have the normal plan. You can pay $30 a month more to have all of your data unlimited, or you can pay $25 a month more to be part of their crazy exclusive stupid program they're trying to actually get you to sign up for. So instead of making something that's valuable to us and selling us value, they arbitrarily priced two things, one of which we want, but they price it higher than the one we don't want, but it includes the same feature. Holy shit. Like, it's so transparent what they're doing. They're trying to force us to higher pay tiers, but because they can't do that due to the regulation around it, they're charging us fees for different things that we need to actually use our internet. Ugh. So here, like these examples, I can already see it happening. Paying $10 more for the enhanced gaming upgrade. Never lose a game again. Guaranteed lower latency. Or $5 day pass for enhanced video calls. This is literally like airplane internet extortion, but from our phone carriers. And it's going to be made legal if we're not careful. This isn't imagination. The ISPs write about this in their blogs and press releases. They talk about these efforts and dreams openly at conferences, and their equipment vendors plainly lay out how ISPs can chop up internet services into all manners of fast lanes. These kind of ISP-controlled fast lanes violate core net neutrality principles, and they would limit user choice, distort competition, hamper startups, and help cement platform dominance. I'm gonna self-plug a little here as a startup guy. This is one of the most underrated costs of this type of thing. If there are 3 video streaming services, which honestly there's kind of 1 or 2 right now, depending on who you ask. But let's say there's Netflix, Hulu, and YouTube TV are the big things for watching television content on your device. I'm making a new startup where I want to have new types of video on my platform. Let's say I'm Dropout by College Humor. $6 a month for a streaming service with a ton of awesome content. But now imagine that I'm on the Video Plus program that has a boost for Netflix, for Hulu, and for YouTube. How does Dropout get that boost? The harsh reality is they don't. The likelihood that a service like this can even be a good experience on your device anymore is so low. And that is horrible for competition in fair markets. Net neutrality is important because the internet is how these new solutions are delivered. And if Dropout can't make enough money or find enough investment or revenue in order to pay Verizon their hostage fee to make sure their service works right on your phone, then you'll never get to use Dropout on your Verizon phone. That's horrifying. That means that there is now a bar, a massive cost bar for entry to compete with any of these services beyond just building the service. And that's terrifying. I personally believe if you're capable of building a thing in a way that is safe, fair, and enjoyable to your users, that they should be able to use the thing. You shouldn't have to pay hostage fees to random companies across the world in order to actually ship your better solution. To be frank, if these rules existed when YouTube was formed, YouTube would never have happened because it would have been such a terrible experience because video online was still a new idea, and the ISPs would have just axed them and charged them everywhere they could. They even tried this with Netflix. There are so many instances of Netflix getting weird random bills from all sorts of internet companies around the world, so much so that they became huge advocates for net neutrality, because that's kind of bullshit. And I'm scared that something like Dropout might fail if the ISPs suddenly have the ability to say, oh, sorry, if you don't have $10 million a month for us, we're not going to make your service faster. Whew. Net neutrality means that we, the people who use the internet, get to decide what we do online without interference from ISPs. I like that definition. It should really be that simple. ISPs do not get to interfere with our choices by blocking, speeding up, or slowing down apps or kinds of apps. Apps compete on a level playing field, and users, not ISPs, determine which apps are successful. Ding, 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 nail on the fucking head. I don't want to live in a country or an economy where the best solution isn't able to win because other companies make the decision. This is why I'm so mad at Apple with the App Store stuff too. If I want to use a different payment provider or I want to play a type of game Apple doesn't like, I should be able to. It shouldn't be this middleman's ability to decide what I can and can't do and what quality levels I can do it at. They might be able to set a floor where anything below this bar of quality we won't support, but they need to make that accessible to everyone. And what I'm seeing here is the opposite. It's them saying, hey, we're actually going to lower your quality unless you pay us more. That is horrifying. That's what Apple's doing with the App Store. That's what all these internet companies are doing here. And that should be outright illegal, especially in the case of the internet. Letting ISPs decide which apps get to be in a fast lane violates those principles. Apps that are in a fast lane work better than those that are not, especially when the network is busy and the apps in the regular lane start to suffer. If HBO Max is in a fast lane, it will continue to work well, even if the network's busy, while all other video platforms would be buffering. Differences in performance, including relative differences in performance, matter. Even small differences in load times affect how people stay on a site, how much they pay, and whether they'll come back. Those differences also affect how high up sites show in search results. All important parts. Another big part, like here, the idea that if you don't pay a fee to Verizon, that your website might come up slower on Google because your site happened to load slower because a few people had a bad congestion day and weren't paying the fee. Oof, that's horrifying. The fact that like Verizon can hold my Google SEO rank hostage with a fee, insane. Thus, letting ISPs choose which apps get to be in the fast lane lets them, not users, pick winners and losers online. And as we've seen in the past, programs like this always favor the most popular apps, even when the program is supposedly open to all apps in the category and no apps are paying the ISP. There's a case a while back where T-Mobile wanted to make music streaming free, but they only supported the services they were like friendly with. So if you were on Spotify or Google Play Music, I believe, was supported, it worked. But if you were on other things, like I was on Tidal, it just didn't, and you had to pay the data fee still. So the idea that certain things do count against your data cap and certain things don't also falls into this chaotic anti-definition. Oh, did they literally cite Dropout? That's hilarious. I swear I came up with that because I use Dropout. I haven't read this before. So the biggest apps will end up in all fast lane stuff. Obviously, they're going to pay the money for it, while most others would be left out. The ones left out would likely include messaging apps like Signal, local news sites, decentralized Fediverse apps like Mastodon and PeerTube, niche video sites like Dropout, indie music sites like Bandcamp, and the millions of other sites and apps in the long tail. Yep. Legislators, government agencies, attorney generals, and states, both red and blue, public interest groups, startups, and open source technologists are all working to reduce the power and dominance of the biggest platforms. The FCC should be working to help that effort by creating a level playing field and banning these ISP-controlled 5G fast lanes. Meaningful net neutrality protections prohibit ISPs from speeding up and slowing down apps and kinds of apps. ISPs can pick winners and losers by putting winners in a fast lane or losers in a slow lane. This is what it would look like if an ISP put everything except YouTube and TikTok in a slow lane. YouTube and TikTok could be 100 megabytes per second plus, and everything else could be way slower. Another fun thing, and ISPs already do this, is a couple of them actually detect when you're running speed tests, when you're on like fast.com or speedtest.net, and will put you in a fast lane so your numbers look really good, even if your actual performance is slower. There are so many of these dirty tricks that they've been doing for like over a decade now that need to be illegal. Oh, I like this. This is what it would look like if your ISP put everything except YouTube and TikTok in a slow lane. So if they intentionally picked all these other services and put them in the slow lane, it looks like this. But if they put YouTube and TikTok in a fast lane, it's the same picture. I was wondering, why is it the same picture? Oh, they're making a fun pun in the article. This article is actually phenomenal, by the way. The effect is the same. In either case, disfavored apps will find it harder to compete because fast lane doesn't mean they're going to make a new magic faster thing and putting stuff down that pipe. What it means is they're separating the pipes and one is faster, one is slower. You can call the fast one a fast lane, but you call the other one a slow lane. I think that's a better definition. By allowing fast lanes, you're implicitly allowing slow lanes. And that's the whole issue here. Meaningful net neutrality protections need to protect against both. This is not controversial. I really hope this isn't controversial. Please, comment section, prove me right. Can we all agree that ISPs are evil? Like, of all things, can we agree on this one? President Obama's November 2014 net neutrality proposal includes this specific protection. The rules I am asking for are simple, common sense steps that reflect the internet you and I use every day. That included, he said, a bright line ban on ISPs, quote, intentionally slowing down some content or speeding up others through a process often called throttling, based on the types of services or your ISP's preferences. Yeah. This is a new way of doing throttling because throttling is explicitly illegal, so they're making up new things instead. Even proposed Republican net neutrality bills prohibit ISPs from speeding up and slowing down apps and kinds of apps. Yes, Republicans are proposing and agreeing on this. Nuts. Many, including me, through the 2015 order did so too. Yeah, this is the FCC 2015 order that ISPs have to cut the shit. This was a huge deal. I was in college at the time and I wrote a bunch about this when it happened because I was so hyped. Clarifying the no throttling rule. This is not the date that this was originally done, but this rule was huge, that it was very clearly defined in 2015, no throttling, that ISPs can't do this. The 2015 Open Internet Order implicitly prohibited ISPs from favoring apps or classes of apps over others, and the FCC should clarify that its proposed no throttling rules prohibit ISPs from speeding up and slowing down applications and classes of apps. The favoring language wasn't clear enough, so they're proposing that they make something stricter, which they absolutely need to do. Almost certainly, the millions of Americans who celebrated the 2015 Open Internet Order and fought the 2017 repeal think that net neutrality protections ban fast lanes and slow lanes, because that's what we all were fighting for. That's what we all assumed. Seems like they found yet another stupid workaround. Cool. So the draft order is different. This is what this whole article is about. We really need this to happen. Given that mobile ISPs' public statements about their plans for 5G fast lanes, public interest groups, startups, and members of Congress have asked the FCC to clarify in the order that no throttling rules also prohibit ISPs from speeding up apps and classes of apps. Another new thing, it's not slowing down, it's speeding up. That can't be done. The draft order did not do that. While the draft order acknowledges that some speeding up of apps could violate the no throttling rule, it added some unclear, nebulous language, suggesting the FCC would review any fast lanes on a case-by-case basis, without explaining how it would do that. Oof. That's scary. I shouldn't have to appeal to the FCC just because my app isn't YouTube. That's terrifying. This language gives the FCC the maximum possible flexibility to accept or reject specific fast lanes in the future as they see it fit. According to the draft order, the agency could find a violation of the no throttling rule if an ISP speeds up specific apps, but not necessarily a class of apps, and the decision to speed up is unreasonably discriminatory, and the speeding up has the effect of impairing or degrading other apps not given the same treatment. In other words, the proposed no throttling rule is a bright line rule for slow lanes. ISPs can't slow down apps or kinds of apps, but for fast lanes, it's a fuzzy, unclear, case-by-case standard. For example, would it be unreasonably discriminatory to create a 5G fast lane that includes the most popular apps in a category since it responds to consumer preferences? Does an unreasonably discriminatory fast lane need to technically degrade or impair the apps that are not in that fast lane for the FCC to find a violation of the no throttling rule? Also, at what point does your app qualify or not qualify as the category? Can the category be video streaming services with over 5 million users? Can the category be video streaming services that have paid me a bunch of money as the ISP? How do these categories get properly defined? And the rules don't clarify this stuff enough. There's no way to predict which kinds of fast lanes the FCC might ultimately find to violate the no throttling rule. This gives ISPs cover to flood the market with various fast lane offerings, arguing that their version does not violate the no throttling rule, and then dare the FCC to enforce the rule. If the mobile ISPs do this, the cable companies will soon follow. Cable companies have the tech to build their own fast lanes, and increasingly they compete with 5G to the home services. God, the ISPs, especially like home ones recently, love making shit up. Like enhanced streaming video might sound stupid that they might do that, but they're going to. My favorite recent one, I talked about this on Twitter, was Fiber Rich, because they can't call their network fiber because their network isn't fiber, because most Comcast users are getting cable to their house. So they cited this new thing that they made up called fiber rich because they can't call it fiber, but they want to say it's fiber because they're bullshitting, because they love to do this stuff. Ugh, insanity. I found this because I was reading through their actual announcement of fiber rich, and it linked to this blog that they help fund. It isn't a real term. It's just a thing they made up to feel good about themselves, to sell something that doesn't exist to their customers that don't deserve it. Ugh, I'm sorry, this shit pisses me off. They love making these things up in order to justify higher costs. The FCC would then investigate these offerings case by case in lengthy and costly proceedings. In the meantime, apps that are not in the fast lane will suffer. Yep. All true. These cases require the companies affected to spend more money. They require us as citizens to spend our tax money because these people are well paid and they're putting a lot of time and effort into this. And they make those startups that are suffering from these rules, killing them, have to hold through crazy stuff. Like, most startups only have a couple years of runway. If it takes 2 years to make the internet work for your app, you might already be out of money by the time the FCC rules that the thing was illegal. And what do you do then? If you're out of money, you can't sue the company for doing the illegal thing. The FCC rules that late into your company's life, you're dead. And it sucks. I don't want to think about how many incredible products might never get to exist if rules like this go through. It just makes the market unfair, unequitable, and it kills startups that are trying to compete in these places. Entrepreneurs and application providers that are not included in a fast lane will have to decide whether they try to get into the fast lane, file an FCC complaint, or just silently suffer. I don't think startup founders should have to spend their time thinking about these things. I think they should be focused on building an incredible solution for their users. That's how entrepreneurship works. That's how fair and free markets work. And this would prevent that. This would be wasting their time battling things that only exist to enrich the small number of people. Ugh. Companies that do file complaints will waste years litigating the meaning of unreasonably discriminatory, all the while going up against giant telecoms that stockpile lawyers and lobbyists. That's the other fun thing. These companies could spend their money making the network better, but if they could spend 20% less money hiring lawyers and then charge you more as a result, why would they ever spend the money improving the network when they could just hire lawyers instead? Terrifying. Unless you're a high-paid telecom lawyer that bills by the hour, the proposed test for what's good or bad fast lanes is a nightmare. Yeah. I'm sure lawyers are very excited about this, though. Not all 5G slices are harmful. Just to be clear, net neutrality proponents are not asking the FCC to ban network slicing. There's lots of ways to use slices for things that are not normal internet services, like a dedicated slice for a farming operation using remote-controlled tractors, slices for telemetry data and oversights for autonomous cars, or providing a slice for a stadium's video system at a crowded game. Fair. But there are good reasons to isolate this kind of traffic, and it can be done without reducing user choices or tilting the online playing field. Under the FCC's draft order, such services would be so-called enterprise service offerings, to which the open internet protections don't apply. But the 5G fast lanes that ISPs are currently imagining are for regular internet access, where ISPs declare which apps or kinds of apps get a fast lane, which would cause real harm and violate the core tenets of net neutrality, and I would argue the core tenets of a fair and free market. We don't need our ISP deciding for us what's important and what's not. We want our ISP to let us decide and stick to the job of connecting our devices to the services that we want to use. It's not even clear why such fast lanes are necessary for consumer internet access. As one industry analyst noted, isn't 5G already supposed to be the fast lane for everything? Yeah, wasn't this how we were sold 5G? Yeah. Luckily, there is still time to fix this. The FCC can and should edit the draft order ahead of the vote on April 24th and clarify in the order that the no throttling rule also prohibits ISPs from creating fast lanes for selected apps or kinds of apps. The FCC just needs to put the fix into the fast lane to get it done before it votes on April 25th. Yep. I really hope they make the right decision. It's rare that I ask my audience to do a thing, certainly much less likely that I'm going to ask them to send emails, because I know we all hate emails. But I think this is important enough that we should all consider submitting comments to the FCC. If you're a US citizen and it's still a decent bit before April 25th, I highly recommend filing an e-file comment to let the FCC know how you feel about these changes. You do that by mailing ecfs@fcc.gov, asking for the GET form, and then you'll get emailed the form to fill out. I will provide links for all of this in the top comment that will be pinned, and if there's any additional easier ways for us to file, I'll be sure to include that as well. If you can't tell, this stuff gets me heated. I think it's really important, and I hope you guys do as well. I do not want to live in a country where the internet isn't fair and free. That's the whole point of this country, right? That's why I love America. We should all have access to things equally, equitably, and fairly, and I don't think ISP should get to bill on every single side about it. Let me know if you think I'm wrong, but more importantly, let me know when you leave that comment on the FCC, because I think they need to hear us shouting loudly about why this is important. And until next time, peace nerds.